Yep.
Good evening, Poultry Keepers. We're so happy you joined us tonight. Um, we've got everybody here tonight, so we're going to have a good show. We're going to be talking about your questions, things that you've asked that you wanted answers to, and we're going to be happy to give them to you. We call that our Flock Talk Show. So, guys, let's get to talking flock here, or flock and talk or something. I don't know. Anyway, I thought this was a good one. It comes from our friend with the pink hatchet. Is there any benefit or concern with feeding fodder or greens to chicks in a brooder after 4 weeks? I wonder if they could benefit from a fresh component to their diet. What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Fodder's fine. My only concerns are the root zone. Almost 80 plus percent of the fodder systems that I've seen, there's a gray mold that grows down in the roots. So if you give them the complete matting, the whole mat, root and all,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be really careful. The successful fodder people that I've seen, the successful fodder systems, they actually, before they even start soaking the seed, they'll do a rinse with hydrogen peroxide or white vinegar or something like that. A real quick rinse to sanitize the seed, and then it'll go into its soak. Then it'll go into the trays or however a person's doing it. But people don't understand that most grains out there, even the best of grains out there, um, have a certain amount of bacteria spores or fungus spores or something on the surface of that grain. Now, they're fine, going into a chicken diet, but when you add moisture and you basically incubate them and give them a chance to grow, then you've got a much bigger issue on your hands. So, fodder for chicks is fine if you have the time to do it. Not nothing against it. I would probably stick to more of the greens and not let them eat the root unless you are sanitizing the seed prior to soaking.
I'm going to throw one at you here. My mentor used to, when he was raising chicks, he would go out and dig up a scoop of sod, dirt and all, and put it in the brooders. Uh,
Yes, sir. That's
Yep.
been going on for a
okay.
long time. But you go get sod where you haven't had chickens. You go get a piece of fresh sod, from, outside of where there's been other manure, heavy traffic or whatever. Right. So you're picking like the best sod on your property kind of thing where it's the cleanest, and it don't take a lot, depending on the number of chicks.
He
You just
used
let them
to
tear it
raise
apart.
dairy cattle, so he had a clover field out there where he would cut hay, and he would go out there and get a scoop of that.
Yep.
Man, they loved it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea. And you're basically inoculating them with everything they're going to be exposed to later in life.
That's what he said
And
he wanted it for, which made
yep.
sense.
Now, I don't know if I'd do it in the first 3 or 4 days because I want to make sure they've eaten feed and drank water and all that. But somewhere around that day 6 or 7, you should be okay to put a clump of sod in there because your immune system's really starting to form in the bird around that day 7 to day 14, and then it continues, but you have a big immune system growth cycle, there in that second week. So I would put it in towards the end of the first week.
I think his were around a week or two old before he ever did that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess he
He
was
knew what he
safe.
was doing, but yep.
Yeah, he was very much old school.
Yep. Nothing wrong with that.
All right. Next question I have here is when I'm working with my birds, I can sometimes start sneezing. Should I be wearing a mask or some sort of protective gear? That's not something I have had any experience with. I don't know about you guys. I know
Well, I mean,
some
it's
people do
it's
have.
dust. It's dust, and I don't know if it's dust coming from the bedding. Is it coming from? Is it poultry dander? Off the birds. So without figuring out whether it's the dander, the skin flakes coming off the bird,
Mm-hmm.
or is it something out of the bedding? We really, so whoever the person is, if they're sneezing when they're putting new bedding in, then it's something about the bedding. And I would try a different bedding.
I think this person, if I'm remembering correctly, has recently been diagnosed with a form of pneumonia that's caused from exposure to poultry.
Really,
Yeah,
that ain't good.
no,
Oh, that's got to be
So,
tough.
yeah, I don't
but
see a good way of winning that. But
no. I guess the bottom line is if you have a concern with it, I would check with my doctor and get his recommendations and just kind of go from there.
I mean, there for a while, John, he was wearing a full-on respirator when
Yes,
he
he
was
wears a
tending to his bird inside
right.
because he has lung issues, respiratory issues. So
yeah, John's got a lot of issues from coming back from Afghanistan.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
yeah, the burn pits and stuff like that he was exposed to. So yeah, he's got permanent lung damage. Um, he's got multitudes of things going on. So I can understand why when he's working bedding, he's got a respirator on. There's nothing
but I
wrong with
mean,
wearing the respirator.
Jeff
Good
probably
dust
has
mask.
layers of poultry NutriBalance on his lungs.
Yeah, I do. Many layers. I carry around about a bag with me most of the time.
Um. Oh, here's a comment from Ingrid Benson. We were talking, going back to the sod deal. She says we used to bring in dirt for our chicks starting at day 4, and
Hmm.
they loved it.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got
And
another
I
question
also
here.
know some old school breeders, they will actually get dirt out of the run and put it in the brooder
Mm-hmm.
to help with chick vigor.
Don't do that too early. That's something
You
you
need to
wouldn't want to
wait.
do
You need to
till
wait a little
yeah.
while for that.
If you've ever had like a really severe chronic disease on your farm, then I like infectious bursal, Newcastle, anything like that, I would not do that. Okay. So, if you've been for the most part disease free, then okay, go ahead, roll the dice and gamble. But I mean, if you've had some pretty severe stuff, those older birds are carriers. That's why I tell everybody, look, you always, 100% of the time, you manage from the youngest to the oldest, always. And you never go back with the same clothes and the same boots to that brooder. Okay. If you can't do that, then you get one of those Tyvek suits and you get a pair of boots for the brooder because it is always youngest to oldest. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the most
Rob,
simple thing to talk about. I mean,
yeah,
to say, huh?
Rob had a good comment here uh, when we were talking about the breathing protection. He said I should probably wear a mask when I clean brooders. Seems like when I blow my nose afterwards, it looks a bit off.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when we were using peat moss for brooding, and I would say the same thing, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, but it's okay. I don't worry about the peat moss. It's sterile right out of nature, and so I'm not worried about it. But to each their
Might
own.
not be after a few weeks in the brooder, but still.
Yeah.
Here's another question that I thought was good, but I love the way they worded it. In the wild west of online poultry sales, how do you recognize reputable breeders? What do you look for, and what questions do you ask? Kerry, I think you've probably gone through this more recently than any of us. What do you think about that? What should they look for?
So when I'm checking out somebody online, I'm looking to see how many followers and how many friends do they have. And I'm looking to see if it's the same person always commenting on their stuff. Because a lot of times these scammers, it'll be the same couple of people commenting on everything.
Yeah.
And they, if you start really digging into it, it'll look suspicious. I would also look to see if they have a website. Most scammers don't create a website, so that helps. And I would look to see, like, how long ago was their Facebook page created, and is there solid content on their page, or is it a little here, a little there, a little here? And another thing that I would do is look at the NPIP database, or ask them to send you a picture of their NPIP card, or ask them to send you a picture of them and the bird you're talking about buying. Actually, FaceTime them.
Yeah, in talking about this, I remember a conversation that you and I had very early on in your poultry journey, and you were sending me pictures about Rhode Island Reds and asking what I
Mhm.
thought from one person. And I told you, I said, look closely at the pictures and what do you see? And you didn't quite pick up on it, but there was no continuity of pins. It was
Right.
this style
None was
here,
the
that
same.
style there. And the person you were talking about was from Florida. And they were showing pictures that had, this is getting real anal here, showing pictures that had grass in it that
That wasn't
doesn't grow
Florida
here in the
grass.
state of Florida. No, it wasn't Florida grass. It was
Yep.
more like a
Look at the
fescue or something
pictures.
like that, and that doesn't grow here. So sometimes you can pick up a little cue on just by watching the photos. As far as the
The other thing I
questions, yeah,
the
go
other
ahead.
thing I'd add to what you two said is, I'm going to call around and ask if anybody knows them, and
Hmm.
I'm going to be looking for references, right? So,
Yeah.
because not everybody builds a website. Many do, but not all of them.
True.
I know a bunch of breeders that they want to stay alone in the woods and they don't want to be bothered, right? But and of course, they're not
Hmm.
going to be the Facebook scammer anyway because they're not selling birds. But I'm just saying, it's like, I'm going to use my network of friends to ask questions, and especially if you're going to be dropping like some big money on supposedly
Absolutely,
really great birds.
absolutely.
I'm going for references
And
personally.
if all else fails, do like Rob said. Assume every online seller is a scam.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, they're guilty until proven innocent. So,
Sad to do that, but you almost have to.
yeah.
As far as questions, um, it's been a few days ago, but I posted an article or called "Common Sense Tips for Inquiring About Purchasing Birds." And the one thing I want to leave with you out of that before we move on is that if you go at somebody with a rapid fire question that sounds more like an inquisition than just you want to know some more information, you're probably not going to go very far. I know people have approached me that way and they never got any birds from me. Try to ask open ended questions, like, what do you think about, or how do you feel about this, or how would you approach this situation? And you'd be surprised by asking open ended questions, you'll get a lot more detail and they're going to be more relaxed and I think you'll get better answers that way.
Definitely.
Let's see here. What are some things that would cause fully developed chicks not to hatch, or what could cause embryos to stop developing? You know, I think one of the most common things I get into when I get this kind of question is the first question I'll ask them is, what is the humidity in your incubator?
Hmm.
And invariably, the mass, the majority of the time, it turns out that their humidity is set it about 60 to 75% for the duration of the hatch, because I've had more than one or two people tell me that I was more concerned with the humidity being so low. I never thought about it getting too high. And when you run that humidity up in your incubator, the moisture that inside the egg that needs to evaporate so a chick can develop and hatch properly doesn't. And so the chicks and the embryos basically wound up drowning inside that egg before they can hatch.
Yeah.
So correct for the average chicken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know waterfowl and turkey are a little bit different, but 55 to 60, right?
Yeah.
Are you shooting for like 58, 57, 58, somewhere in there?
In my hatching time, Jeff, I run my humidity at 55% day one through the hatch. I don't even
Okay.
have to up it during the hatch, because honestly, if you'll pay attention to your hygrometer in your incubator, you got a bunch of eggs in there getting ready to hatch, and when they start pipping, the humidity is naturally going to bump up a little bit.
Right.
But in that hatching time, doing that, I've had several 100% hatches in that thing.
Come on, you're not allowed to have 100% hatches. Come on, Rick.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
against, you're breaking the rules.
I mean, hey, if your birds are doing what they're supposed to do and they got solid genetics,
Guilty.
crap
I was just
happens.
being sarcastic.
No, no,
I was
no,
just
no. I
being
know that.
sarcastic. So yeah, nobody has 100% hatches. Come on.
I
Sue
bet when
Dobson
you,
makes a good point here. Going back to the questions, she said, I strung a fellow along for 2 months because I didn't like his answers, and I was the seller. So if you're going to ask them questions, if they are a good seller, they're going to be asking you questions too. They want to know, are you a good fit for their birds?
yep.
All right, you
She
skipped
also
over
makes
the alfalfa meal. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, she also makes another good point here. Ambient humidity is one thing I take into consideration. And honestly, and Sue's spot on the money, we don't all live in the same geographic location. We don't all have the same kind of weather. Up north, the humidity is much, much lower than it is down here where I am in the beautiful, hot, muggy South. I mean, you can go out and it's like walking into a wet blanket sometimes down here. So that can also affect your hatches.
Yeah,
Now,
a lot of the bigger hatchers, when I've gone into like bigger hatching rooms, people doing, 500,000 or more, they always have their room temperature fixed with either air conditioning or heat, and they have
Yep.
a humidifier or a dehumidifier in that room. So they're really keeping the room at the same setting as the hatcher or the incubator. So your incubator doesn't have to work as hard, and there's no temperature fluctuations. And I see those people doing 90+% hatch rates as well.
mm-hmm.
So there's something to that. I've seen people trying to hatch in their shed outside, their garage, their basement, places like that, and they struggle. Their
Yep.
incubators just have a harder time keeping up. Now that's before hatching time. What's come out the last couple of years. That's more the old GQF Sportsman,
Yeah.
which they're a fine they're a fine incubator, right? Don't get me wrong, but you need to put them in a place that's stable so they can stabilize.
And there's a lot of those GQS out there. I used them for years,
Mm-hmm.
and the more consistent the environment those machines is, the better your hatch is going to be. Just exactly right. I've seen it over and over and over again. Jeff, you had a question, or
Yeah,
you
that's
were going to ask
Yeah.
something, and I cut you off
So
there.
yeah, Standard Farm Islamabad asked about alfalfa meal nutrition value in a chicken feed, and look, I want alfalfa meal in every chicken feed. Three reasons. My top three reasons. So one, it's an excellent source of vitamin A. So alfalfa is going to carry through and bring vitamin A with it, unless it's like really, really old alfalfa meal. So that's one. Two, it's got a unique, dense kind of fiber. So it keeps the gut wall clean. As it's passing through, it kind of works a lot like oats do. So vitamin A, beneficial fiber, a really good high density beneficial fiber. And number three is it's bringing the carotenoids with it. So it's going to really enhance like leg color, yolk color, skin color. And I think I get an immune system boost out of it, but I can't prove that. So that would be number four. But yeah, if you have access to it, alfalfa meal should be in every chicken's diet.
I agree. It is really good for them. Okay. We've got one more comment here from Rob, and then we'll get back to our question list here. Rob said he runs his machine at 60% humidity for the whole incubation, hatching everything. Tweaking the humidity at the end adds a lot of potential complications with lowering the temperature the right amount. Right on, Rob. Okay, getting back to our questions here. What is a safe poison that will, and I love the way she worded this, that will toxify rats but will not affect dogs or cats? And I'm assuming by toxify she means it'll kill them. But
There's a bunch of homemade recipes out there. I'm seeing people using baking soda mixed with like oatmeal or rice or ramen noodles or something like that. That's probably as safe as you're going to get.
Well, Jeff, was it you that was talking about the bubble gum?
Yeah. So, okay, before they changed chewing gum to what we know it these days, 10, 15 years ago, I used juicy fruit when it was just sugar. Okay. And it didn't have, any aspartame or, artificial type stuff in it. I would set it on the rafters and the runs in my pole shed, and I just open up the foil so they could smell it, right? And I kept putting juicy fruit out until nothing was eating it anymore. Okay, and that was more for mice, but the mice problem went away. It'll work for rats as well. And for years, I told people to use vitamin D, which is actually what's in most rat poisons, and then, get a high concentration vitamin D and mix it with peanut butter. But, 3 expensive dogs died because the owners were lackadaisical and left it where the dog could have access to it. Right? Mm-hmm. There's no secondary poison to it, right? So if the mouse or the rat or whatever eats the peanut butter with the vitamin D, it's not going, and then the dog were to eat the mouse or the rat, it's not going to be an issue. But, if, dogs and cats can't deal with high levels of vitamin D either, shuts down their kidneys and their renal system. They'll put them on IVs for about a week if you catch it quick enough. So
there are some rat poisons out there advertised as pet safe. I haven't used any of them, so I can't vouch for that. But if you're so inclined, that you can go out to Amazon and search for pet safe rat bait, and they'll pop up for you.
So back to the gum thing, Rip, is
yes,
if you can find a basic gum, not mint flavored or anything like that, and it's made with sugar only, that'll work to manage your mice and your rats. They can't pass it. It clogs up their intestinal tract. It's kind of a hard way to go, but I guess I don't know if that's any better than drowning them in a bucket of water or not, but Probably traps. I would go at it with, some good rat traps, or actually they've got some squirrel traps. They're tube traps, right? So the squirrel runs into the
Yeah.
tube and
Yeah.
it snaps down on them. They're not cheap, but they're going to last you forever. But I would look at a tube trap made for squirrels and put a bait in there that the rats will come for.
I remember years ago, I was at a poultry show and I actually carried Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham Banner Club.
Yep.
And there was a vendor there, and one of the things he had was what then was being marketed as a tin cat. And it was all galvanized metal, and it had a place for the rodents to go in on both sides. And he said,
Yeah.
you don't even need to bait it. And of course, we all thought, well, I don't know about that. He said, I'll show you. So that was Saturday. And we had to go back on Sunday for awards and to coop out the birds. But he set one of those tin cats and put it up against the wall where the holes in the trap were up against the wall, and came in the next morning and there was like 6 rats in that thing. It was crazy.
Nice. So I used to have a really big problem with large rats. And by large, I mean like the size of ankle biter dogs.
Mm.
And so what I did was I got some straight up, really solid, not good for anything stuff. And I put a wire cage around it. Like one of the dog carriers that a lot of people use to transport birds in.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in one of those and I shut it. I was like, because my wife has a dog that's, I think they're like 4 or 5 pounds. They're ankle biters. And that was a big concern because they do run around outside as well. But I put this stuff in one of those cages and locked it. And quite a few got in it and were found in close proximity of it afterwards. And since, I feed good feed because that guy right there made it, or designed it. My chickens don't eat rats. They like the fresh stuff that I feed them. So as long as I picked them up quick after they were found, I didn't have any issues.
Interesting.
So, I mean, if they can't find anything else that works, put the poison inside something the dog can't get into.
And hang it up too, or tie it to the rafters or something like that.
I don't want to pick on anybody, but rats and mice in a chicken environment, okay, is honestly, I know I'm going to piss somebody off, and I'm sorry.
You want me to say it?
If you're leaving free choice feed out there, or spilled feed out there, or you're not storing your feed in, mouse proof, rat proof containers, you're inviting them to come live at your place every fall. Okay.
It's just like the "We Are Open" sign in a restaurant.
Right. So, back to me preaching about feeding a controlled amount of feed so that they clean it up every day. There's other positive side effects to that method of feeding. But, if you got chickens long enough and there's feed laying around, you're going to have mice and rats. Yeah, they're going to come for it. So that's why I'm not a free choice feeder person. So,
You
Standard
convinced me of
Farm
that
had
too.
I was gonna say if they eat it all in the 10 minutes, there's nothing there for the rats.
Yeah, I mean, when you're developing birds, I want them to almost run out every day, but not a cleaned out pan, right? But you want to start teaching them after they're about a week or 10 days old that, this isn't a buffet and you can't waste feed. But So like feeder height, amount being fed, just proper feed management all the way around makes a huge difference. So the alfalfa meal level that I recommend pretty much across the board is 5% of the mix. So I'll use 7 or 8% in the developing stage, which comes after the grower. And that's only to manage energy levels in that so the birds don't get fat. But pretty much best rule of thumb is 5% of the diet.
That works.
Easy enough.
Let's see. We got another question here. Let me pop this up. I'm getting 11 chicks this spring. If I use a mash starter feed, is it okay to mix in coconut oil in the feed to help birds all basically to help them eat all the fines powders in the feed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first I need to know what the starting level of the fat is, in the feed that you're bringing in. I don't want to go over 8% for chicks, 8% total fat. So, if the feed coming in is 5% or 6%, yes, you still have room to add a little bit, coconut oil, lard, whatever you choose. But just don't go over 8% total fat for those baby chicks. And the reason I say 8%, quail are different, but 8%, because if we go too high on fat, we stand a risk of the fats clogging up the villi and papillae of the intestinal tract and reducing total nutrients absorbed. Okay. So if you stay 7, 8%, life is good.
Very good. Let's see. What's our next question here? And this one is for Jeff. Says, what specific things do you look for when someone asks you to evaluate the quality of their feed for them?
Well, I mean, that's not a short answer because I'm looking at protein like everybody else, but I'm actually jumping down below the proteins. I'm looking at the total amino acids. Of course, I'm looking at the calcium and the phosphorus levels to make sure they're right for their age appropriate for the bird. You want to make sure the salt level is not too low or too high. Then I jump down and I look through the ingredients. And if everything is camouflaged as processed grain products, processed grain byproducts, processed protein products, I'm going to usually tell somebody to keep looking, right? Because that is a place that likes to mix and match, change their feed formulas based on the cost of grains and commodities. So it's not going to be consistent every time you buy it. It's not going to be the same as what you got last time. So I do avoid those things. But I'm going down through the list of the guarantees. And, I'm checking every one of them. There's not a lot there. But then I'm going through, I comb through the ingredient list, looking for red flags. Like I looked at one earlier today, and it had propionic acid added to it. And the only reason you would add propionic acid, it's a preservative. So it allows that feed to sit on the shelf longer and still theoretically be good feed. But it's not, not necessary. I'm looking for molasses, right? I don't really want molasses in a chicken feed. Too much molasses can cause diarrhea. The birds are going to eat it. I mean, they're going to eat it like crazy. And, and they put it in there for the scent and for some dust control. But if your molasses level gets much above 2% of the total mix, so I'm looking at where the molasses is in that ingredient list. I'm looking for preservatives. I'm looking for artificial flavorings, and you don't have to put molasses and artificial flavorings in a really good feed. You only have to put molasses and artificial flavorings and preservatives in feed that they swept up off the floor and put it in the bag for you. So, if you got to cover up the smell of the feed and make it more palatable, there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Jeff is actually, you're the one that probably a year and a half ago told me we were talking about feed, and you said, well, try it and see what it tastes like. And I was like, no, because I smelled of it, and it wasn't something that I wanted to try and eat. And then once you got me to making feed, I don't even like oatmeal, but the smell of freshly milled feed, I mean, I would eat it. I have eat it, but like I would put it in a bowl with cereal, with milk, like
Yeah.
cereal.
But see, you're
And I
spoiled
tell
now because when your feed arrives, you know that it got milled 1 or 2 days before you received it. Okay. It didn't get milled and sit there because, now the feed mill you're working with, they don't actually keep inventory. Okay. They make
no, they don't.
everything to order. And so it don't get any fresher than what you're getting. And,
I've literally
and
had feed milled that morning, picked up and loaded on a truck that same day, and headed my way.
but for anybody who's listening, if you're afraid to taste the chicken feed, then why are you giving it to your bird? Okay. I mean, I walk into a lot of barns, a lot of chicken coops, a lot of different places. And one of the first things I'll do is pick up a handful of feed and taste it, because it'll tell you a lot. And you know what? If it tastes bad, what are you feeding it for? I don't know.
Kerry, I'm going to add this is that I'm really glad to hear that I'm not the only one he told to do that.
Well, if there's something in there, when you read the ingredient list, if there's something in there you're afraid of, then you got the wrong chicken feed.
Yep.
And one thing I've noticed when we're talking about looking at feed tags and stuff, some of them on the guaranteed analysis, they'll have 6, 8, 10 different things listed. And some feed that's more sketchy, they have like 2 or 3 things. And
Yeah,
the
they have the
stuff that
basic
is
protein, fat, and fiber.
supposed to be, yeah, they have protein, fat, fiber. But then they say down in the ingredients that they add methionine, they add lysine, and other stuff that's supposed to be in there, but it's not. And that to me is another red flag of a sketchy feed.
Well, I don't know how they get by with it because so every feed manufacturer is required to be registered with their state Department of Ag, right? And I know this because our company has to pay. We have to register our products. Every state that we sell one of our products in, we have to be registered with them. And at the end of every year, right, we have to tally up how many tons or how many bags or how many units we sold in that state. And then we have to pay a tax, right? It's called a tonnage fee. Every state, all 50 of them, okay? And so when you register, okay, you're on their radar screen, and there's a national group called AFCO, American Association of Feed Controls Officials, right? AFCO, and they put out a manual. They have rules and guidelines that you have. These are the minimum guarantees for chicken feed, right? And these have to be on there. So how do these people get by with only protein, fat, and fiber? I have no clue. Somebody's not doing their job or they're flying under the radar. But if your chicken feed only has protein, fat, and fiber, you need to keep looking. There's a problem.
Could be lack of training on the inspector's part.
Well, a lot of states don't have enough inspectors to keep up with all of it, truthfully.
I think Alabama has like 3.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they'd keep up with it. So,
got to be a challenge.
It is.
Hey, we're over halfway through the show, and I've got some PSAs I want to get to tonight. I think this is an important part of what we're doing here. But first, I want to share this with you. We would like to take a short break to express our appreciation to the Portrell Company for their sponsorship of the Poultry Keeper 360 Live programming. Portrell has been a trusted name in sustainable farming and poultry nutrition for decades, and their commitment to providing high quality, natural products align perfectly with the values we hold dear in our poultry community. Thank you, Portrell, for partnering with us to empower poultry keepers everywhere. We're truly grateful for your dedication and support. And we do thank you for that. Another
My
thing I want to
pleasure.
mention here is Poultry Keepers 360 is this month we're entering our 4th year of doing this, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to a bunch more years of doing this and having fun too. So we appreciate you for sticking with us. I want to say congratulations to Sue Dobson and Jessica Watson. I think I got some pictures here. They were recently named as recipients for this year's micro grants from the Livestock Conservancy, and they're going to use those grants to continue and further their work with the rare breeds that they're working with. Sue's working with Crevecoeurs and Rhode Island Reds, and Jessica has those great big Shamos. So I'm looking to see some good things coming out of those folks in the very near future. Congratulations, ladies. Uh, Also, I started a new audio series. It's called The Intentional Poultry Keeper. I'm going to take you through a lot of steps on how you can become more intentional with your poultry keeper management, breeding, and all those other things associated with it. You can catch it on YouTube. I put up a new message every Saturday morning, so check it out if you get a chance. And lastly, one of the things we harp about more than anything else on this show, well, maybe not more than anything, because we probably talk about amino acids more than this, but you've heard us mention time and time again the importance of feeding your birds grit. And I've had some folks tell me before, well, I've got baby chicks and they're on uh, crumbles or whatever, and they don't need grit. Let me show you something. This is a video, just a short video of, I think these birds are about 2 to 3 weeks old. These are young shamos, and they are chowing down on grower size grit already. Look at this. They're going after that stuff like there's no tomorrow. So even chicks need grit. Okay, let's get back to our questions here. When breeding poultry, what is the most important thing I should be trying to accomplish? To me, I think when I set about breeding poultry, I want to accomplish one thing. I want to make each generation better than the previous generation. I think that's the best goal we can possibly have. At the very least, I don't want to make it any worse. And that requires a lot of thought, a lot of care, a lot of record keeping and evaluation. But that to me is the most important thing we can do. And I'm going to follow that with a very close second. And that we need to work diligently to produce good bodies on our birds. With good bodies comes good capacity, and that's what's so important for our birds' health and reproduction. If they don't have the capacity for all those organs to work properly, they're just not going to produce for you. So those two things, uh, capacity, but first I got to go with striving as hard as you possibly can to make your birds better.
So, Rick,
Yes,
I'm going to be just a little bit of the devil's advocate here.
go for it.
If you bred a bird strictly to the standard of perfection for that bird, right? To
Mm-hmm.
the standard. So, for the people who are listening to the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
what would be their chances of winning? Because when I walk through the poultry show at the Ohio National and I see the size of, like the Brahmas and the Orpingtons and things like that, there's no way those birds are within the range of that standard of perfection, body weight
I
wise. Okay.
I will agree with you. I will agree with you.
So,
They
we're preaching, let's give them better depth and body and make a better bird and improve them and the whole bit. But if somebody bred to the standard, they'd have a hard time getting a ribbon, I think, based on what I saw there.
One of the reasons that I preach breeding to the standard is not necessarily all about showing it. You need to do it for that, yeah. But when a bird is bred to the written standard, and that includes size, okay, they're going to have a bird that is capable of doing the job that breed was created to do.
I agree
Uh,
with you 100%. I,
oh, I
I,
know,
I
I know.
get, I get where we're going, but I'm just saying for the show people, if you bred to the standard, unless the judges, all of a sudden, started judging by the standard, okay, yeah, you can make the perfect bird. Well, I mean, you can strive for the perfect bird according to the standard. And then, but if the judges aren't on board, then it's going to be tough.
It's an education thing. There is absolutely no doubt about it. I judged for a number of years. A lot of folks didn't like the way I judged because I didn't pick those great big birds. They're big and they're flashy, but they're incorrect. The standard says they should weigh this, not 3 pounds more than whatever the standard is.
Yeah.
You're allowed a
It's an
deviation one way or the other, right? Isn't it? Is it
2 pounds,
10%?
2
Two
pounds
pounds? Oh, two
on large
pounds.
fowl.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
that's a lot. I mean,
Um,
And I think
I could
I
see
think
a
that
1 year old.
more people are concerned about everything else because those are obvious things: the comb, the wattles, the coloring,
hmm
barring, feather. They're more worried about that than keeping the bird within standard weight. Because I've actually heard breeders say, they don't carry around a set of scales and they don't weigh them. But to that, I will say that if you pick up the same thing over and over and over, you know the weight.
Yeah.
Like Jeff, I feel confident that you worked in your plant for many, 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 many years, and y'all sell a lot of product in a 10-pound bag. And I guarantee you could pick up a bag and you would know if it's 9 pounds or 10 pounds.
Right.
So an experienced judge would do like what Rip said, would know, hey, this thing is either within variance or it's too big. But I also think that when they're trying to judge several hundred birds in a day, that might be the thing that they're not that picky on.
I
It's
just,
not fair.
I'm on board with what Rip just said about, breeding birds for depth and body conformation and size and
Mm-hmm.
all that. I'm Rip's second biggest fan next to Mary, but you know, um, I just, for the people who are showing, it puts them in a tough spot, right? If they're trying to follow
Yeah.
the standard and make well, Karen, who used to be on the show, she's a prime example. She was breeding for the standard, right? And the birds she started with were so oversized that she was trying to get the size down because she was running consistently 1.5, 2 pounds over or even more from the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I guess you got to pick whether you want to be a show or if you're going to breed to the standard, at least until the judges start moving back towards judging to the standard more than, how big they are. But Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there,
No,
Rick,
no,
but
no. You did good. You didn't say a thing in the world that I don't agree with. Um, and the other side of that coin too is it's got to fall to the breeder at some point to take responsibility for the birds that they produce. But it becomes a question of ethics, and if they're not willing to release their own breeding, no amount of judging one way or the other is going to prevent it.
well, the three of us know after being at Ohio Nationals 2 years back to back that, you know, 80% of the breeders in that room are not necessarily policing it because
No,
they're
more
after
than
that.
that.
They're after that, they're after that big ribbon, right? And as many ribbons as they can get. So,
Big
but
ribbons and points.
yeah,
They're point crazy. Points. When
they're,
they started the point system, they didn't do poultry any favors at all. I better shut up before I get in bad trouble here. Moving right along.
all right.
We've got a comment here, comment or a question. Do you gentlemen and guests are a great wealth of information? Do you have experience with waterfowl or know of a group or resource of such knowledge on waterfowl? Thank you. I have raised waterfowl. I don't by any stretch of the imagination consider myself an expert on waterfowl. But there is a national organization that could probably help you with that, and that's the International Waterfowl Breeders Association. I would think that if I wanted more information, I would go to that group. If you got somebody they didn't know, they could point you in the direction of where to go to get the information you're looking for. Okay, and Joy wants to know if we color coordinated our shirts tonight, and I didn't even realize that we were color coordinating. So thank you for pointing that out, Joy.
I think Joy's the only one who probably caught that, but it was complete accident. So
Yes, it's not we planned it or anything.
I mean, to Chris's question about waterfowl, I can help him with the nutritional side of it. I can't, when it comes to the breeding aspects and body conformation and so on. I'm not that guy. So
okay, here's the question. I have milking goats that produce more than I can use, and it's really easy to make yogurt. I was wondering how much chickens can have per day, and if it would be enough to give a boost in lysine/protein. How would you go about incorporating it? Jeff, I've heard you talk about this before, and I know you answered this question when it was posted, but
yeah, and okay, so milk is more so just going to give us like a beneficial gut bloom. It's going to feed the microbes in the gut. Although there's people out there that argue that, right? So, but anyway, I if it's done right in small amounts, I see benefit to it, right? So I wouldn't be giving it to them every day. And, a couple, 2, 3 times a week is fine. But look, folks, at the end of the day, the protein of milk is 3%. Okay. In the world of a chicken, milk, yogurt, all those things are, like a Greek yogurt might be 5%, just after it's all said and done. But the protein level isn't that high, and the amino acid levels are not that high. So what you're doing is you're feeding the gut, you're feeding the beneficial bacteria, you're making the bird healthier, right? And you're going to help it thrive. But it's not, and I'm not opposed to milk, and you only feed small amounts of it, right? What they'll clean up in about an hour. The other measuring stick that I've observed, in my years of working with animals is about 1 gallon per 100 pounds. No, sorry, 1 quart per 100 pounds of body weight. So, like if you had 25 4-pound chickens, 1 quart. That's that. If we go above that, I start to see diarrhea, and I see, we go the other direction, right? So don't exceed 1 quart per 100 pounds, and don't do it more than 2 to 3 times per week, maximum.
Makes sense. And Standard Farm Islamabad, I think what he's wanting to know is the dry alfalfa available in my country is this called of alfalfa meal and how to make alfalfa meal myself. I guess he's wanting to know, can he make alfalfa meal himself?
Well, okay. The only thing alfalfa meal is they take dried alfalfa. Now, I mean, true alfalfa meal, they actually cut the alfalfa fresh, and they do what they call a direct harvest. So they chop it, and it goes right into the wagon. Then it goes to a giant dehydrator where they'll use propane, natural gas, or some other heating element to drive the moisture out of it. Right? It's in this giant rotating drum, and they shoot, heat or flame down through the middle to dry it out. And it gradually, so the rotating drum is on a slight angle, so it goes in one end. By the time it gets to the other end, it's completely dry. It's lower than 10%. It's like 7 or 8% moisture. So ground alfalfa doesn't travel well. Okay. So they grind it, and then everybody puts it into a pellet so they can get enough weight on a truck. Then they'll move it across the country or wherever it's going to go, and they grind it again to make it powdery. Okay, there's the snapshot of how alfalfa meal is made. Now, for Standard Farm, if they grow good, high quality alfalfa, especially if he's desert or dry and it's irrigated, it'll keep all of its green. It'll keep that vitamin A. But you can grind alfalfa hay, just like we see it in bales. You can put that through a grinder and turn it into meal, and it works fine. It's the same stuff. At the end of the day, it's the same stuff.
So it's a little more complicated than I thought when you talk about how they make it.
Well, how it's made at the dehydration mills where they do alfalfa, there's a science to it, right? And but they'll go cut 100 acres or more in a day, and they'll run it through that giant dehydrator dryer, and then they'll press it. They'll run it up an elevator leg and put it through a pellet mill, and then they put it into storage bins till somebody buys it. So that's how they do it.
He's also got a question here about corn gluten meal. Is it good for use in chicken feed? And any benefits if he used up to 60% gluten meal in feed?
Yeah. So what I've found over the years is small amounts of corn gluten meal are fine. It's actually high in methionine, but very small amounts. Anytime I've gone over about 10% of the diet, the birds quit eating. So there's something, it reduced feed intake. It's widely used. You see it all over the place. It's better for dairy purposes. Large ruminants, a little bit in horses is fine, but chickens and pigs will turn their nose up to it. Just something about the smell. On paper, it looks really good, but if the animal don't eat it, it doesn't matter how good it looks on paper. So you can use some, just keep it at a minimum. You're not going to replace all your soy with corn gluten meal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can squeeze in another one or two here. I've been told it's both okay and not okay to give apple cider vinegar to my birds, which is correct. I think it's quite all right. I've been using apple cider vinegar for a long time.
I don't know where it came from, and I can't find it, and I wish somebody would help me. But somebody, or more than one somebody, posted something that using apple cider vinegar in their feed or water is going to strip calcium out of their body. Okay, it's gonna force the bird to pull calcium out of their body. That I've heard where it's going to interfere with, calcium absorption. And then there's another one for like in the summer when they're having heat stress, it causes something like acidosis, or they had a fancy big word for it, like 6 syllables long. So I don't know where this is coming from. I can tell you that vinegar has been used as part of an electrolyte solution, just like the one I've given everybody, for thousands of years. Okay, vinegar's been around for a long time, and it's been used for electrolyte replacement, particularly for heat stress type purposes, thousands of years, right? So, now look, in a rare circumstance or in an unusual circumstance where somebody's water pH may be down around 5.5. Here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, I've seen water samples and parts of the county where the water's down around 5 pH, 5.5 pH coming right out of the well.
Whoa.
Well, I don't necessarily want to add vinegar to that and drive that pH down lower. Okay. So,
but that's a really good pH for chickens.
Yeah, 5.5 is okay. I don't really want to. 5.5 would be my bottom number. That's my personal preference. Okay, there's other data out there, like the commercial industry will run it down to 3, 3.5, 4, and they'll make it really acidic. Well, here's the thing: certain pathogens and certain bacteria will not grow in that environment. Okay, like your Clostridium bacteria do not like a really low pH. So you can have a layer of like safety net, or safety there when you're running that lower pH. Now they typically won't do that for an extended period of time, but they will over certain periods of time through the bird's grow out. They'll drop that pH really low. Usually during the coccidiosis, necrotic enteritis period, so day 10 to day 20, they'll run it. They may do it then. But there's a lot of considerations to take into effect before. But look, for most people, I can't say all, but for most people, using apple cider vinegar in the water is going to be a plus. Okay. It seems to aid in digestion somehow. And it also seems to relieve stress, including heat stress. What else you got, Rip?
I think these two we've already covered a bit. Here's one. They say the standard for my breed says they should lay eggs that weigh 56 to 65 grams. Mine are only laying eggs that are 45 to 50 grams after 3 months of laying. Are small eggs always genetic, or could they be nutritional? And they must be talking about breast, because that's the only breed standard I've ever seen where they specify how much an egg should weigh. If the birds mature too quickly, they can lay a smaller egg than the birds who take 2-3 weeks longer to mature. I think maturity of the birds, sexual maturity of the birds, because once they stop laying, all the other growth stops.
Right. Yeah. And so I come at it from a different angle, Rip, and I say, look, so the pullet needs to weigh at least 80% or more of what her adult weight will be. Right. So you have the breed standard, so if she's supposed, and I know the sex link numbers way better. So a mature sex link is going to be 4.4 pounds. Okay. And I know if I stimulate her before she's 3.6 pounds, okay, I'm going to fight small or pullet eggs for a long, long, long time. Because like you said, the body growth stops when she starts laying eggs, unless, okay, the way we fix this is we now have to feed enough protein and enough nutrition to let her body continue to develop and make the right size egg. Okay. So I think a lot of people I think they're lighting them or sexually stimulating them too small, is honestly what I think is. It could be genetics, it could be that line. I'm not saying that's not true, but I think, stimulate timing, your birds and stimulating with that light, there's more to it than just, oh, she's 20 weeks old, I'm going to run the lights up on her, right? No, she's got to weigh the right amount, right? She has to be developed to a certain stage before you do that, or you're going to fight undersized eggs forever, unless you
I
make that
know
feed
that,
adjustment.
excuse me. I was going to say, I know some folks that are working with dual purpose breeds. They are purposefully trying to breed them to where they start laying at 17, 18 weeks of age. And they're not going to get good egg size doing that.
Well, again, depends on what they weigh. If they grew them correctly, right? Let's say they had the perfect feed, right, all the way through. And if they can hit that 80% mark on body weight, and I'm not, it doesn't bother me, right? I'm okay with it. So, but how many people, all right, so since you've met me, Rip, how many people that are feeding the right feed to do that?
I will say that I know of a bunch more now than there was when we first met.
You cheated. Come on.
No, that's a fact.
Yeah,
As
that
a matter
is
of
a
fact, I
fact,
was thinking
right?
about this just the other day that since you and I met and we got to working together, that I noticed a lot more people, I can't give you exact numbers, but that are showing a real interest in feeding a higher quality feed than I ever saw. But they were like me. Hey, I get the cheap stuff down at the feed store. I mean, the poultry nutritionists know what they're doing. Well, yeah, they know what they're doing, but they're not doing it to benefit my birds. But I'll just shut up and leave that there. But
Okay,
I think there's a lot
so
more paying attention to what we're talking about.
yeah, all those big companies, Cargill, Purina, all of them, ADM, no matter who you see on the shelf, they have nutritionists.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee they are balancing. They do what is called least cost balancing. Okay.
Yeah.
They put all their ingredients in their computer. They put the current, somebody down in the bean counter office put in the cost of those ingredients, right? And it's all figured out. And they get it loaded. They set their parameters, which are the minimum requires, and they push that button, says calculate, right? And this is what it spits out. And that's what they go with. Now, I would also tell you that a large number of these poultry nutritionists that work for the large corporations, they couldn't tell you the last time they held a chicken or seen a chicken or interacted with a chicken or
I can
even
believe that.
interacted with a poultry person. Okay. They just sit in a little office. Some get a window, some don't, right? And all day long, they're trying to figure out how to save 50 cents a ton for their boss. Okay. Now you don't see that out on the shelf. You'll never see those prices go down. But inside, they're going to be, okay, that's their job, right? And the more they can save, the better they look. And the computer does all the work, right? The nutritionist doesn't really, he just puts the ingredients that are available into the system and sets the bare minimum, parameters for that feed.
I told somebody the other day, I said, do you want a nutritionist that works with a marketing department and an accounting department? Or do you want a nutritionist that works with chickens?
That's a
Did
good
you
way
throw
to.
me under the bus again?
I was driving.
Oh, y'all. Guys, I've had a good time tonight. I hope the two of you have too, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed the show tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
It
So
was a good show.
it was.
Yeah.
We'll be back in 2 weeks, and I've twisted the arms of Sue Dobson and Jessica Watson. They're going to be here to talk about the mini grants that they got. You know, what all's involved in applying for a mini grant,
Nice.
and what do they hope to do with those mini grants. I know they're going to do good things. I just want to know what are they going to do. So they're
Yep.
going to be back. They're going to be here with us in 2 weeks, and that is going to be an outstanding show. I just feel it in my bones.
Yes,
So
sir.
until then, you guys have a good 2 weeks. Keep enjoying your birds and keep working with your birds and keep having fun. And we'll see you then. Thank you so much.